I wanted to get this out of the way real quick. Now, there are people who mean many things by this, even when they speak about, if they speak about nationalism, or specifically, they will call groups in history nationalists who they wouldn't apply the term of what they call in modern day nationalists to that. Right? Like anybody in defense of a nation or a country against an occupying force is called a nationalist. Rightly so. Now, like the nationalist forces in Vietnam, who were they? The nationalist forces in China, that. Now, is Orthodoxy nationalistic or whatever? Because I've talked about nationalism here and the differences between nationalism, National Socialism, imperialism, all this kind of thing, and comparing and contrasting, and then with big state, internationalist, socialist, and the varieties of what this is. And I've also talked about orthodoxy, but I've never really talked about the relation of the two. Now, for those who say, well, to be an orthodox is to go and try to take back Constantinople by arms or whatever, that's silly, because that's a place. And we know that Jerusalem was wiped out, and we didn't have it for about 200 years, and it had to be restored. Or maybe, yeah, about 200 years we didn't have it. Almost exactly 200 years. Maybe you could argue between 210 and 190, 190 and 210. But again, Orthodoxy is a religion. And it has its culture, it has everything in there, right, of what it is to be Orthodox. It used to be, you could actually say the Christian race, the Jewish race, this thing, because race was language and religion, right? For the Jews, it was Hebrew, and then now it's Yiddish and Judaism. For Islam, it was, being a Muslim, whatever three branches that exist now, and Arabic. In the West, it was Latin and Rome, and still to a large degree it was Latin to a large extent, only up till about 100 years ago. And in the East, it was Greek, right? At the base, and then it shot out. Coptic was for the Copts, for that tradition. And then you had Syriac was the language. Even when Arabic became dominant, it was still Syriac down to the Malabar coast in India, the southern point of India. And then you had Slavonics brought up. And then, but that was kind of post a little bit, but still up to about 200 years ago, race was language and religion, because people didn't move around that much. Still to this day, you can see that up in Ireland. The people who, at least until the 1980s, spoke a lot of the Irish language, the indigenous Celtic Gaelic language of Ireland, and were Catholic, as opposed to those who did not, who only spoke English and were Protestant. And even of where they came from and who they said they were, they'd say they were Scottish or a citizen of the UK before they'd say they were Irish, right? So this thing, nationalism, it should never be in Orthodoxy and nationalism should never be infused as one and only one. I mean, you could say we're fighting for the crown of Russia back in the day, and for our country and for our godness, and that to defend its borders and things like that. But you would never say, okay, this is it. Like the idea of the Byzantine Empire being the seat of Orthodoxy and Caesaropapism. Most of the Caesars of the East, and even in the West when it was Christian, were idiots. I mean, you had Julian the Apostate, you had Michael. I mean, Michael was an iconoclast. You could argue everybody up till Theodosius was borderline Arian, right? Or even that Constantinus, the son or grandson of Constantine, his predecessor. Maybe it was, I don't know. It was Arian, right? up until Theodosius, until that installation. And then you had disputes and all this kind of stuff, and then Heraclius had to come in, and then there was the rise of Islam, and then this nonsense. So it wasn't in better shape when they were in charge. In fact, it's a good thing. There was a reason why that got cut off. So they couldn't. So in modern day, you couldn't have something like the papacy, which actually remained pretty strong and didn't really bend or anything until it had to deal with things like Protestantism, and then it started going off, right? And that's what would have happened with. I mean, we might look like, or what's called in the areas of, we would still exist, but what's called in the areas of Russia, Greece, might look like Protestantism by now, So being proud to be Russian and being Russian Orthodox and seeing those is very combined, because they were for so long. Fine. But the idea of this is one people, yeah. We're one people, we're going to find a state and form it, and that's it. No, the Orthodox live all over the world. And they always have. I mean, from as far as it could spread. It went into southern India, right? There was the 5 princes of India that were Orthodox, but there was never. The Orthodox were in the Persian Empire. They were. Who if it wasn't for Boris and Gleb, right? Where would they go? They went as far as to Ireland, St. Patrick. These people. So, Ethiopia, Russia, we know all that. But it's not, there's never been this link, which historians always try to make because that's what they see, right? And it's a different thing of, well, if you look from the smallest level and go up through biology and stuff like that, you're most likely to, if that's where your starting point is, you'll probably be an atheist. If you look at the big picture and try to come to conclusions from the big picture, you'll almost certainly be a theistic person, or at least a deistic person. So it's 2 ways of looking at things. So when the History Channel or something, BS like that, which is, now it's terrible. You can't really believe a thing on that. When they project their things of, when Orthodoxy began was when the empire, started to crack. And that's when it became Orthodox. It's a bunch of crap. Again, even with icons and iconoclasm, go back to Epiphanius. You can look at his argument there, and then go back to even to the Epistle of Paul. I won't even use Dare Europus. There's proof in stone, literally. Might not be there anymore because of ISIS, but letter of Paul. He spells it out for you right there in Galatians. Talks about, hey, you've seen Christ crucified. So, he didn't say you heard, you said you've seen. But, yeah, that's it. Peace to you.